presentation?
I will sign into Google Meet also in a minute.
Because you can also watch it on BevCam YouTube stream.
Yeah, that might work better.
Yeah.
I'll try those. Okay, I'm standing by. I'm on mute.
Okay.
Present.
Wayne, Ronnie. For everybody here. Another minute, it's not quite 7.
Fine, but you
This is unusual.
Do people want me to open the windows?
No, if the AC's on, I would.
I know. It's just Mayor always likes to open the windows, but it defeats the purpose of the AC.
Yeah, that's what I think.
It's just like I'm constantly the guy who comes from the dog from daycare and he's like, right. I mean, I'm gonna need it.
You have no idea what the
I
temperature is in here.
It can drop like a rock.
8 weeks ago.
I saw that sent Darlene a message because I was like, do we have power?
But they say none of
Power's
that is
out. I
protected.
got nervous. I was like, oh no.
But I don't know where the power is at,
BA5.
though. That's when I...
Ready. I don't have my gavel, so I'm just gonna bang with Brendan. Good evening. The Tuesday, July 19th, 2022 meeting of the Beverly Planning Board is hereby called to order. Couple of announcements before we get started. First, you'll see to my right is our new vice chairperson, Derek Beckwith. Our previous, I agree wholeheartedly, our previous vice chair, Alexander Kraft, had to step away due to increased responsibilities on the home front as well as his job front. So we thanked him for his service, which was awesome over these years, and we welcome Derek as the new vice chair. First announcement done. Our second announcement is there is a sign-up sheet on the podium back there if you want to receive updates for upcoming meetings. If you leave your name and I think your email address, the planning board staff will make sure that you're notified of upcoming meetings. Secondly, this is a remote participation meeting. It is not a hybrid meeting. This type of remote participation meeting was in place even before COVID, and we have our colleague Wayne Miller participating remotely. Everything, because of Wayne's remote participation, everything tonight will be a roll call vote. We have BevCam broadcasting tonight, and you can watch it live on channel 99 and YouTube. We've been told there may be some audio issues, but we'll keep our fingers crossed and hope we can bypass those. Let's just call the roll for attendance, correct? Okay, just to verify attendance tonight, Sarah Bartley,
I'm present.
Derek Beckwith,
Present.
Ellen Flannery,
Present?
Wayne Miller,
Present.
thank you, Rodney Sinclair,
Present.
Andrea Toulouse.
Present.
And I am Ellen Hutchinson, and I think I'm present. Our first agenda item is a subdivision approval not required plan. I believe we have one for 32-34 Swan Street, and the applicant is Vincent Orlando.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of the applicant, Thomas Alexander with offices at 1 School Street in Beverly. This property is located in the RMD district, which is the residential medium district. That's what the RMD stands for, and it was established to provide for multi-family residents at medium density. So this, historically, this neighborhood is approximately 100 years old, give or take. Of the 80 lots in the general area, this is probably, thank you. Thank you. Is probably by far the largest. In fact, this was originally, when this subdivision was created, this was 2 lots in that subdivision, and we have gone back to the original configuration. You can see in the immediate abutters there, the lots with the houses on them are about less than half the size of the new lots that are going to be created. So this went before, even though it had been historically 2 lots, and in fact the city of Beverly has 2 addresses for this, 32 and 34 Swan Street, so it had always been considered 2 lots. But what happened is that at a later time, the zoning was increased so that the whole neighborhood pretty much became non-conforming to what zoning was done up to. So what we sought and received from the Zoning Board of Appeals was a variance to allow this to become 2 lots again. And it works very well because the existing house is at the far end of what you're looking at, the right lot. So you can see that this was always intended by the original builder of the home to continue to be 2 lots. So by unanimous vote, the ZBA voted to allow this to be subdivided back approximately to its prior situation, but to do that, they needed to we needed to get variance for the frontage. So I'm sorry, variance for the area. This actually conforms with frontage. There's no frontage waiver involved here. The frontage in this zone is 65 feet, and Lot A has 66 feet, and Lot A is on the left. Lot B has 95.24 feet. So it conforms with the frontage, so that's why we're not going for a waiver of frontage here. This is not a conventional subdivision. It's an approval not required plan. Every lot in the immediate area has lesser frontage actually than this does. So it's really very much in keeping with the neighborhood. We in fact met a couple times with neighbors. At first they had some issues with the design, and we incorporated many of their suggestions into the plan, and they actually at the final meeting of the Board of Appeals were all in favor of it. In fact, they went out of their way to say what a pleasure it was to work with Vinny Orlando, who's right here, who's the owner of this property, and to reach something that everybody was happy with. So in any event, we would respectfully request that the approval not required plan be granted, and happy to answer any questions you might have on that.
Questions for members of the board for Attorney Alexander? Eric?
Mr. Alexander, I'm curious, and you say many suggestions. I'm curious as to what some of those suggestions were that you incorporated from the neighbors?
Yeah, the main one, originally it was going to be 2 duplexes, and it was, so as you look at the plan up here, the lot to the left is vacant. So originally there was going to be a 2-family there, but the house next door is a single family, and so they were not happy about having a 2-family next to them, and it was closer to the lot line that they were happy with. So we moved the house, and this was incorporated in the ZBA decision. We moved the house so it is now 20 feet off the lot line? 30. And it's a single-family house, and they like the design, and so they actually were one of the many neighbors that supported this.
Okay, thank you. I'm also curious, just because I'm trying to figure out still after all these years, all the map designations, what are the X marks through Lot A? It looks like it's, trying to figure out what that line represents.
I believe that that's a fence?
Fence,
Yeah,
yeah, a fence.
Oh, it's an existing fence?
yes.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. Which will likely be removed, I would imagine.
Yes, it will be, yeah, exactly.
Anything else? No. Other questions, Mr. Alexander? I have one. Attorney Alexander, you commented that many of the lots in the neighborhood have lesser frontage, but I'm wondering if you could comment on the lot area sizes of the various
Yes, well,
parcels in the neighborhood.
this is, these two lots are as big or bigger than any, I only have one of these, but this is the neighborhood plan, which shows, in yellow, our lot, you can see it's much larger than those in the area, and it shows in the whole area, how the size of the lots, area-wise. You can see that these two lots are as big or bigger than pretty much everything in the neighborhood.
And this, both lots have frontage on Swan Street, which is a public way, right?
Well, they both have frontage on Swan Street,
Okay.
but the corner lot also has frontage
sure.
on Sawyer Road.
Yep,
And they're
I'm
both
sorry.
public ways, yes, and they both, all utilities, et cetera. Yeah, sure.
Okay, if there's no further questions for Attorney Alexander, I would welcome a motion on this matter, please. Sorry.
Madam Chair, I'd move that the proposed subdivision at 32-34 Swan Street be deemed subdivision approval not required.
I have a motion by Mr. Beckwith. Is there a second, please? Seconded by Ms. Flannery. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Sarah Bartley,
Yes.
Derek Beckwith,
Yes.
Ellen Flannery,
Yes?
Wayne Miller. Are you with us, Wayne?
Wayne, you'll have to unmute.
Yeah, that's it.
There was a yes. I'll
was
tell
a
him he's got
yes?
to mute his other.
All right. Rodney Sinclair?
Yes.
Andrea Toulouse?
Yes,
Ellen Hutchinson, yes. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, our next agenda item is we move into public hearings. Could I have a motion, please, to move into public hearings?
So moved?
Second.
Was that Ms. Flannery?
Which one?
I have a motion by Flannery, seconded by Mr. Beckwith. I will call the roll. Sarah Bartley,
Yes.
Derek Beckwith,
Yes.
Ellen Flannery,
Yes?
Wayne Miller,
Yes.
Rodney Sinclair,
Yes.
Andrea Toulouse.
yes.
Ellen Hutchinson. Our first public hearing, we're going to have a slight agenda change because we anticipate this will be relatively short, right, Mr. Alexander? So our first public hearing will be the waiver of frontage and definitive subdivision plan for 15 Folger Avenue. The applicants are David Morandi and Jane McLeod, and they are represented by attorney Thomas Alexander.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, for the record, Thomas Alexander with law offices at 1 School Street in Beverly. I'm here on behalf of the applicants, David Morandi and Jane McLeod. David is a retired firefighter.
Can I have to read the
Oh,
legal notice?
I forgot.
It's been a while, I have to
Yeah,
read the
yeah.
legal notice.
I'm sorry.
Notice of public hearing, Beverly Planning Board. Notice is hereby given under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Sections 81R and 81T. The Beverly Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, July 19th, 2022, during a public meeting that begins at 7 p.m. at Beverly City Hall, 3rd floor, Council Chambers, 191 Cabot Street, Beverly, Mass., relative to a request by David Morandi and Jane McLeod, 15 Folger Ave, Beverly, Mass., for a waiver of the frontage requirements of the zoning ordinance and a subdivision of land pursuant to the Massachusetts Subdivision Control Law and the Beverly Planning Board rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land. Proposed address is 15 Folger Ave, as shown on Assessor's Map 10, Lot 58. The application and plans are on file in the Beverly Planning Department.
Thank you, and apologies.
Well, that's fine.
Back to you, Attorney Alexander.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I won't repeat what I've already said, but again, I was about to say that the applicants are David Morandi, recently retired firefighter in Beverly, and a longtime Beverly resident, and Jane McLeod. They've owned the property. Jane owned it since 2015, and they together have owned it, I believe, since 2019. Historically, this neighborhood is another neighborhood that was created in the through the early 1900s up through about 1930. All of the lots within the subdivision are pretty close or smaller in size than the lots that are being created here. The existing lot has 17,647 square feet, and it's being split into each lot having 8,300 square feet or thereabouts. This property was also went before the Zoning Board of Appeals, which granted it a unanimous variance to put a second lot. And again, this is really restoring this to somewhat what the original subdivision was, but in actuality, this particular lot was 3 lots when it was created. So it's going to 2 lots, but it's, again, pretty much in conformance with all the other lots. I also prepared a plan here that just shows the immediate neighborhood. The orange, you can see it's probably the largest parcel in the immediate area. I've also colored in what was that, green or yellowish green? Anyways, the folks that signed a petition for the ZBA in favor of this. So you see that all of the abutters signed off on that. Unlike the A&R that I was before you just immediately prior, this has less frontage than is required, so it does require a waiver of frontage under the state law, so that each lot actually has 72.71 linear feet of frontage. The R10 zone is, under present-day zoning, is 100 feet. But I think as you go up and down the street, you'll find that most of the lots have frontage in the range of 50 to 75 square feet. So this is much in keeping with the neighborhood, and it's as you know, it's a public way, so it has all required utilities and all required city services, including trash pickup, water, sewer, and private electric and cable are also available. So having said all that, I respectfully request that you allow this waiver of frontage and the subdivision plan, and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions from members of the board for Attorney Alexander? None? Derek?
So, as I'm looking at the property here, the existing dwelling, and taking it what's been historically on this site is the one property on the left-hand side,
Yes, it's
And
located
and
at the far end of the lot.
Yeah. And then the open lot, now, when you pass the orange and yellow highlighted.
Yes.
It didn't have a delineation in terms of the size. It showed the original lot
Yes, it
on
just showed the
there.
existing conditions,
Yeah.
yes.
And so do you happen to have a square footage for the neighboring lots in the area? I'm just,
I don't, but I think you can eyeball it off of this, this plan to see that, you know, half of this is bigger, as big or bigger than, for example, all of those right across the street from it.
Yeah.
Those ones right along here and here.
and these are single-family dwellings in the neighborhood?
Yes, they are. There are some two families. In fact, the existing dwelling on this site is a two-family.
I was going to ask, it seems larger than some of the other.
Yes, yeah.
And what are the plans for the other lot? Is it for a two-family or a?
Single-family.
Single-family?
Yeah. And it's a, you know, it's a fairly modest house, I think 1,800 square feet. And that was incorporated in the ZBA decision, the actual house plans that were presented.
And I also noticed that, that Mr. Zamburis has an attachment here. I didn't have time to review it. Can you give us a synopsis of what that,
Well, he presented the drainage plan for the property and also a list of waivers, because, you know, on the standard subdivision plan is a brand-new street that you're putting into effect so that you build out, you know, there are rules and regulations that don't apply really to the existing streets, because there's already pavement, utilities, sidewalks to the extent that there are sidewalks all built out. So as Darlene pointed out in her staff report, it's oftentimes not necessary to list the waivers because it's not really applicable here, but we do it anyways just to conform with the law. So basically, he did a list of, you know, the various waivers that because they're waivers because the existing street is not, it does not have those same dimensions.
Other questions for Attorney Alexander? Okay, hearing none, I will open it up to anybody from the public who wishes to be heard on this matter. No one? Going once? Going twice? Any reason not to close the public hearing? Okay, without questions, without comment from the public, I'd welcome a motion to close the public hearing, please.
So move, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Flannery. I have a
Second.
motion by Flannery. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Andrea. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Sarah Bartley,
Yes.
Eric Beckwith,
yes?
Ellen Flannery,
Yes?
Wayne Miller,
Yes.
Rodney Sinclair,
Yes.
Andrea Toulouse,
Yes?
Ellen Hutchinson, yes. Public hearing is closed. We can go to the merits of this matter, seeking a waiver of the frontage, the granting of the waivers, and approval of the subdivision plan. Welcome a motion, and you can take it all three, or I think you can do it individually, whatever.
Madam Chair, I'll try.
I love it. Thank you.
Everybody close your ears, please. This is going to be horrible. I move to approve the waiver of frontage and for 15 Folger Avenue. Simple enough, or no?
Sure, we can. I have a motion by Mr. Sinclair. Is there a second, please? Ms. Flannery seconds. Discussion on the motion?
And that's just for the frontage?
Yeah, so we'll take them individually then.
Okay.
All right, so I'll call the roll then. Sarah Bartley,
Yes.
Eric Beckwith,
Yes.
Ellen Flannery,
Yes?
Wayne Miller,
Yes.
Rodney Sinclair,
Yes.
Andrea Toulouse,
Yes?
Ellen Hutchinson. Okay, so we have the approval of the waiver of frontage. Want to keep going, Mr. Sinclair, or would you like to pass it off to one of your colleagues?
Hey, I'm already in it. Move to, well, let me just ask a quick question in the staff report. Darlene, you did mention 93 and 95 Corning Street. Typo? Did you already, all right, bring that, my apologies. All right, move to approve definitive subdivision plan for 15 Folger Avenue.
Perfect, thank you. Is there a second on that? Andrea seconds that. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Sarah Bartley.
Yes.
Derek Beckwith.
Yes.
Ellen Flannery.
Yes.
Wayne Miller.
Yes.
Rodney Sinclair.
Yes.
Andrea Toulouse.
Yes.
Ellen Hutchinson. Yes. That passes. Want to take it home, Mr. Sinclair?
There's more? I'm just kidding.
We don't have to, but we can.
Yeah, I mean, you could vote to accept the waivers shown on the plan.
Okay.
That's just a matter of record.
All right, let's move to accept the waivers as shown on the plan for 15 Folger Avenue.
Perfect. I have a motion by Mr. Sinclair. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Andrea seconds. Discussion on the motion?
So I just wanted to say, because I made the comment that I hadn't seen the list, I've just reviewed the list, and they're very standard, so, thank you.
Okay, good. I'll call the roll. Sarah Bartley? Yes. Derek Beckwith?
Yes.
Ellen Flannery?
Yes.
Wayne Miller?
Yes.
You with us, Wayne?
Yes. You know, okay?
Yep. Rodney Sinclair?
Yes.
Andrea Toulouse?
Yes.
Ellen Hutchinson? Yes. Motion passes. Thank you very much. I know that. Okay. I might blow it once, I won't do it more than once. A meeting. Okay, our next, next agenda item is public hearing for site plan review number 154-22 and inclusionary housing number 20-22 for the property located at 218-224 Cabot Street and 18 Federal Street. The applicant is Leggett McCall Properties LLC, and they are represented by attorney Miranda Samasco. And so as not to make the same mistake twice, would the planning director kindly read the notice?
Yes. Notice of public hearing, Beverly Planning Board. Notice is hereby given that in accordance with Section 300-98 of the zoning ordinance, the Beverly Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, July 19th, 2022, during a public meeting that begins at 7 p.m. at Beverly City Hall, third floor, Council Chambers, 191 Cabot Street, Beverly, Mass., relative to site plan review number 154-22 for the renovation of existing storefronts on Cabot Street, demolition of a one-story addition to the rear of the building, and construction in its place of five-story building containing 4 floors of apartments over ground-level parking. The applicant is Leggett McCall Properties LLC, 10 Post Office Square, Boston, Mass. 02109. The property is located at 218-224 Cabot Street and 18 Federal Street in the CC zoning district and is shown on Assessor's Map 11, lots 247 and 252. The application and plans are on file in the Planning Department and available for public review.
Thank you. Attorney Samasco, the floor is yours.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Miranda Samasco at Glovsky & Glovsky at 8 Washington Street in Beverly. I'm here on behalf of the applicant tonight. Is it feedback? I'm getting a little bit of an echo here. Okay, good. I want to just introduce the team that is here for this project tonight. We have, on behalf of the applicant, Leggett McCall Properties, a number of folks, Principal Bill Gaz. We also have Principals Addie Grady and Sam Cole here on behalf of Leggett. And the team also includes the SV Design. We have Thad Samasco and Stefano Basso here. And we have Charlie Ware from Hancock Associates, the civil engineer, as well as Rebecca Brown from Greenman Peterman, our traffic consultant. And I should also call out that I have a colleague here, Connor Walsh, also from Glovsky & Glovsky. So as the notice said, we're here principally for site plan review tonight for a mixed commercial and residential project that's allowed in the CC district at this location. We are going to jump right into a project overview for the board tonight, focusing on design as well as parking and traffic. I'm going to keep my comments short. We appreciate that this is a prominent location and that there are lots of concerns and questions, and we want to make sure that there's ample time for that at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, and excuse me, I should also call out that I think I saw a representative from the owner here, Alan Dana, as well. So members of the board know that a representative of the owner of the property is here. With that, I will turn it over to Bill to introduce his firm.
Thank you very much. My name is Bill Gauze with Leggett McCall Properties, and joined by Addie Grady and Sam Cole, also with Leggett McCall. We are a Boston-based development firm with about a 55-year history in the city and work across a collection of projects, multifamily, office, and lab projects, Boston as well as surrounding communities. This is the first project that we have pursued in Beverly, but it's of particularly interesting to me because I personally was a Beverly resident for 20 years, so very familiar with the site, the location, and excited about the opportunity to redevelop this historic section of Cabot Street. So with that, I'll turn it over to Thad to walk through the design.
Thank you, Bill. Thad Samasco, SV Design, 126 Dodge Street, Beverly. I will say it's a pleasure to be in front of the real live board again.
Nice to be back, thank you.
So I appreciate that. So the project is borders Cabot Street, but also has frontage on Chapman and Federal Streets. It's the Family Dollar store as we know it, with the Rent-A-Center and the Bonefish Harry's. And the two-story section of that building, original building, is about 50 feet deep. And then off the back over the years where one-story additions were added. And it's our intention to preserve the front 50 feet and preserve that building and remove the one-story pieces and combined with the parking lot behind, create the housing. So keep the density off of Cabot so that the pedestrian experience of Cabot Street effectively will be unchanged, except there'll be a rather dramatic change of the storefront aesthetic. There is also an outlying lot on the other side of Chapman Street and Federal that is part of this project that we're using for our parking as well. The site is generally flat. So these are the two sites. The total together is 1.46 acres. It's rare for Cabot Street to have a site that goes front, that's this large, frankly, that goes front to back, that can accommodate a building of this type. The project has 113 units, apartment units expected provided, with 10% of them affordable. 6% of them will be accessible. They'll all be accessible for visitor. It's a 5-story building, as was mentioned, 4 stories on a podium. There's 5,000 square feet of space, commercial space on Cabot. We're hoping that one of those spaces will be outfitted to be a restaurant. We have 153 parking spaces, which is what zoning requires for the 113 units. So we meet the residential parking for the project, and Rebecca will talk in depth about the parking, which I know is, is of concern. We have incorporated a high level of sustainability in the design, as our firm always does, but also at the urging of Leggett McCall, who's committed to it. And we like the idea that we're preserving this existing building. Original thought was maybe we should take it down and do a whole new one. We thought, no, it makes sense to push the mass a little bit more to the back and keep this building that is quite a beautiful building if you look carefully enough past sort of the existing storefronts. And as Miranda mentioned, it complies with zoning in all respects. So the benefits in our minds are that we provide, the much-needed housing, more activity downtown, help support retail and restaurants. We're preserving the building. Leggett McCall is known for having high-quality management. Clearly, there'll be an increase in property values, which is an increase in city revenue, and then the general sustainability upgrade from, a dark asphalt parking lot and a fairly inefficient building in terms of energy to a building that'll be very efficient. You all probably know the site, but looking south on Cabot Street, it sits in the middle of the block, essentially, the two-story building on the right, the Barter Brothers, well, I call it the Barter Brothers Florist, I guess it's no longer the Florist, but in the middle, and then on the far end, the abandoned Falloon restaurant. And looking north on Cabot, this is our building here. It has those really cool transom windows up above on the second floor, and we have some original photos that showed how that building came down to the ground, and our plan is to kind of basically get it back to that level, which I'll show you in a minute. If you're coming down Federal toward Cabot, on the right here, there's a very tall building. Just past that is the open parking lot, and just past that is the parking lot behind our building, and you can see the one-story piece of the building that we're planning on raising coming back off the back of the Family Dollar. If you're actually standing in the parking lot, looking back at the backside of Bonefish Harry's porch, the Rent-A-Center, and the Family Dollar, those are the pieces that are being removed, and that two-story part of the building is going to remain. So the facade work involves removing the existing storefronts and putting in brand-new storefront, bringing the cast stone details down to the ground. Obviously, an energy-efficient storefront. There's evidence that a lot of the existing stone banding exists, and we're hoping to restore it, and of course new windows and all the things that will make it energy efficient. The actual ground level plan has two access points off of Chapman Street to get into the ground level garage, one up top here and one down the bottom there. They're both in and out. There's parking spaces, of course, in the garage, 124 in the garage, 29 are on the outlying site. The plan is to have bicycle parking for at least as many bikes as there are parking spaces. We would expect that we'd have a pedestrian entrance into our building here for residents to come in, a bit of a gallery, and come up an elevator up to the upper levels, as well as a secondary elevator here, given the size of the building. We've provided some bike rooms, we've provided some pet washing stations. We have a management office right up front here to manage tenant matters and also keep the front activated. And then we have the two spaces, ideally the restaurant here with potential for an outdoor deck and another commercial space here. The storefront itself meets the guidelines for active pedestrian. The building's more than 80% of the frontage. More than 70% is glazing. All those, the 2 feet to 10 feet is glass. 12-foot floor to floor happens to naturally meet it by the existing building. There's trash within the building that comes out into, it comes into a trash room that's located here, so the trash is all contained within the building. And there's kind of a service aisle here that comes down that will service these areas in here for the commercial tenants. Typical floor plan, this is the second floor, so on top of the parking deck is an outdoor courtyard for the residents. The browner color are 2 bedrooms, and the greener colors are 1 bedroom. These darker green are 1 bedrooms. There's a large amount of common area, fitness center, a commons room that open out onto this, which we hope will be a very active place, for the residents. Up front in the existing building are naturally occur some of the apartment units, which actually would be pretty special units given the ceiling heights and the tall windows. There's smaller amenities like a little bit of work from home space and so forth incorporated. Many of the units have balconies that are provided. I will point out that we've held the building back along, this is essentially the property line. We've held it back on that after we get above our first floor level for the purposes of massing, and also allows for some nicer deck spaces for the residents who are on this side of the building. We have tried to articulate the building with some of these forms to reduce the apparent mass, and I'll show you some elevations shortly. You may recognize some of these forms from the St. Mary's sort of floor plan has some of these same ideas across the street. We kind of picked up on that with our building. So the rest of the floors are generally just kind of march up. One of the spaces that's common is a 2-story space, so we lose 1 unit here, but generally speaking, the units line up all the way up for the 4 floors of housing. There is usable space in the basement for the tenants and for the retail and potential restaurant as well, existing basement. We will make the roof solar ready. We'll set the rooftop mechanical equipment in the center, as we usually do, so it will be well screened. And from the street looking south, the difference will, you'll just see the top of the building if you're coming out of that, from quite that distance away. As you cross the street, the building essentially will, the new part of the building will essentially disappear. As you can see here, there's just a bit, I think, of the elevator overrun just peeking out here as I sort of walk out of the front door of the church across the street. If I'm at City Hall, if you will, looking toward the building, you can see it, popping up above here. We sort of suspected that someday perhaps this building would get a second floor because it has some parking that might be able to provide for that. That if it did grow like that, clearly our building, has basically is gone. If you're on Bow Street, just past the A&B Burger, looking across at the parking lot behind the old Falloon, you can see our building where we have the garage level. We're planting some Boston ivy along here. We have the balcony railing here, and then the building is back something like 18, 19 feet from that face. The balconies help give it some scale and definition, and then we start this idea of inventing that vertical brick pier idea that came on Cabot. We bring it across, and we start to bring some brick into the place where there's a lot of pedestrian activity. If you're at the corner of Bow and Chapman with looking down Chapman on your left and Bow on your right, you start to see how that brick starts to work. We have the idea, we have in many of our buildings of this attic story, so the 5th floor is lighter and has a kind of a cornice, so you have the base with a cornice line, the shaft, and then the capital, sort of that classic idea, and we're articulating it again with the brick, the 2 brick piers, and the garage entrances are here and here. This was part of our plan. The sidewalks are getting redone, the curbs are getting redone, full landscape plan, city street landscape, as well as our own landscape. And this is straight on to Chapman. We have provided some room for some planters in here along the way, but not to obstruct the driver's view leaving the garage. And then corner of Federal and Chapman with St. Mary's, the old school on your left, our parking lot, open parking lot on the right here is kind of looking down. You can see the impact of the building's form articulation. And these tall vertical piers, and then the recessed window pattern, which also has a very vertical kind of orientation. So we're kind of working to be complementary to what's happening on the front side of the building, and it's also what's happening around the general neighborhood. Here we are looking at it from Federal. On Federal, there's more room for street trees, so we're providing, a few more trees and a little more room for landscaping. And then you have to get in an airplane, but if you did and flew up above here or in your drone, you can see, looking into this courtyard, some of the fitness equipment on the left and a pergola, some grill station, some sitting area for residents in that courtyard, as well as our kind of, what I'll call the service corridor coming through here. Design Review Board had some comments like, can you make the fence a little nicer and darker, which we have done for this. We've incorporated some of their comments already. There's some more, I think, coming. They wanted some more input on the landscape plan, for example, and we've submitted a revised one.
I'm sorry, could you speak up just a little bit?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
I'm getting some feedback, so that's why I'm... So this is the landscape plan. It shows the intended plantings and street trees. Generally speaking, native, non-invasive, where possible. Street trees on Chapman, for example, need to be a certain species because there's wires there, and National Grid has a certain species they want to use, which happens to be an eastern redbud. And along the Federal Street is a series of trees. For example, design review suggested they all not be the same species, so we've mixed them up to add a little more interest. And in the plantings, they wanted more color, so we've added some more color. And then you can see our courtyard landscape as well. Some pretty pictures of plants. And some of the site features, including the bike racks and the pavers we're using, and all the lighting is dark sky compliant, all casting down. There's no lighting coming up off of the building. I think with that, Addie will like to speak a little bit about the project sustainability.
Sure. If you want, I think you can move that microphone just a little bit away from that speaker, and that might
help. I'm not getting feedback now, but can you hear the feedback? Can you hear me? You can hear me okay? All right, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Addie Grady. I am a Senior Vice President and partner with Leggett McCall Properties. I'm responsible for our multifamily activity throughout the company. And I also happen to have a background in sustainability. I started my career as a green building consultant, certifying Energy Star homes and LEED for new construction back before it was cool in the early 2000s. And so my personal passion has a lot to do with the sustainability features. These slides are new to me, so I don't know if I'll be able to speak to exactly what's here. But I will say that our primary focus as a firm, and me personally, has to do with energy performance, energy efficiency, reducing the loads in the building, reducing the energy consumption of the building to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and reduce impact on climate. There's obviously a myriad other elements of sustainability. LEED covers kind of a whole gamut from sustainable materials to site sustainability and residents' access to services without getting in a car and things like that. And certainly this site has many of those features embedded in it just because of where it is. But as a company, we go above and beyond, particularly on the energy efficiency piece. And I'll tell you that we even go so far on one project we have in Boston. We are going to a standard called Passive House, which is basically the highest level of energy efficiency you can achieve in a building, and it's what you need to get to with energy efficiency in order to ultimately get to net zero. Many of those features we're able to incorporate in a building like this. It is a lot harder to get to Passive House in a wood frame building because of where the insulation goes effectively on the building. But we are focused on those items. I'll get to those obviously in the next slide because this one is about site. As Charlie will speak to, I believe in a minute, the reduction of impervious area and provision of infiltration features here is obviously an improvement to what's there. The location of the building and the project up high topographically means it has low to no risk of flooding or storm surge. And we're also reducing the heat island effect by reducing the amount of blacktop, and the roof will be a white roof to reduce that urban heat island effect. And also, as Thad pointed out, it will have solar-ready features, and we typically, as solar leases or solar power purchase agreements become at par, which they are right now, we would go ahead and execute on that solar installation. The building itself will achieve Stretch Energy Code and then some. It will be LEED Silver certifiable and Energy Star rated. And that continuous exterior insulation is a big part of what makes a building very high performing in terms of energy efficiency as well as air tightness. I've had some conversations with the City of Beverly's Sustainability Director, Irina Keefe, on this, and we continue to engage each other on ideas for how we can improve, and we will be working together going forward and engaging with the electric utility company as well for their input. I'm happy to answer questions about sustainability, but I don't want to take up a ton of time on the minutia here. Oh, there's more, sorry. I'm sorry. One of the big features of achieving a high level of energy efficiency is using this electric heat pump technology. As the grid gets greener, which it will over time, the building naturally gets greener as well when you use electric for heating and cooling. There will also be fresh air provided to the units that is preconditioned through an energy recovery ventilator, and it's a way of providing very clean, fresh air while keeping the building very, very tight and preserving the BTUs that you've used to heat and cool that air rather than expelling it with your ventilation. Occupancy lighting sensors, EV charging stations, you can sort of tick down the list. We try to cover as much as we possibly can. Is this one me too? One of the feedback, one of the items of feedback that we have received from many different areas is that there are these artist studios in the building currently that serve a valuable purpose to individuals who are producing art and who contribute to the vibrancy of what the city of Beverly is. And there aren't a lot of affordable studios. In fact, there are probably almost none for these people in the city. So what we're proposing to do is take an area of the building where these studios, I think they exist there now, is that right, Dad? It had been slated to become a unit. And what we're proposing to do is to swap out a unit, I think it was probably a 2-bedroom, or a 1-bedroom plus den, to become 4 artist studios affordable to artists, and that would reduce the building unit count to 112 from the 113 that we have shown in our application. So this is a new proposal before you today. I don't think it's in the materials that we've provided to you, and it's in response to feedback that we've received from the community. And with that, I'll turn it over to Charlie.
Good evening, my name is Charlie Ware. I'm with Hancock Associates. We talked about stormwater. The site currently is all surface parking, some rooftop is on the site. Almost all of the site will be converted to rooftop, so that one step actually
Mr. Ware, could I interrupt you for just a moment?
Sure.
We're getting a signal from BevCam. If you could speak into the microphone, please.
Sure. Back up.
No, yeah.
Keep it over there.
Stand here. Okay. Very good. Is that better?
It's not for us,
It's
it's
us,
for the
it's for BevCam.
TV.
Television. All right, very good.
A little closer, please, just a little. Thank you.
Okay. As I was saying, just introducing the building onto this site has a large positive environmental impact on the stormwater on the site. Stormwater that comes off of pavement is dirty. The water that comes off a rooftop is considered to be clean. So that one step is a big improvement. In addition to that, we're proposing vegetation on the rooftop, on this rooftop area where it's also a kind of a decking area, and then we're proposing vegetation around the edges as well, which is right now there's no vegetation on the site at all. So there's a slight reduction in the amount of stormwater that comes from the site by the introduction of those two. In addition to that, in this area we have a courtyard in this area as well, and we're going to put underground infiltration systems, plastic infiltration systems, that'll help promote the infiltration of stormwater to the groundwater, replenishing the groundwater. We'll collect that off the rooftops. And it'll also have a slight reduction in the amount of runoff that comes from the site as well. the stormwater from the rooftop collected through the infiltration, and then what isn't infiltrated will run out into the drainage, which is in Federal Street and in Chapman Street. We'll also, to get to the other utilities, we'll be connecting to water and gas, sewer, and electric all over here on Chapman. I think the sewer line is proposed to be here, but gas, water, sewer, electric, telecommunications will all be coming from Federal Street. This has been changed. It did show one gas line coming onto Cabot, but we've removed that. We're going to use the existing gas line, which is already feeding the building, so we won't be getting into Cabot Street, which I know has just been rehabilitated over the last few years. Not a whole lot to tell. I think that's our story, a big improvement to the drainage on the site, improvement to the amount of runoff that runs from the site, and overall a positive environmental impact.
Rebecca's going to speak about traffic and parking.
Good evening, Rebecca Brown from Greenman Peterson. Just checking that you can hear me okay? Perfect, thank you. So we have put together a traffic impact and access study, which we've submitted to the Parking and Traffic Commission for their review. We did meet with them to go over the findings of our traffic study earlier today, and they did give us some comments and some additional things to look at that we'll be looking at before our next meeting. But I'll kind of go over the traffic study that was presented to you and kind of talk about the items that we're looking at. So the traffic study that we put together, as you can see, included a total of 11 intersections along Rantoul Street and Cabot Street, and as well as the intersection of Federal and Chapman and Bow and Chapman Street intersections. We did traffic counts at all of these study area intersections back in May and June of this year, and then adjusted those traffic volumes to account for COVID variations, where there's still a little bit of a decline in traffic volumes due to COVID, and then grew those out to a 7-year design horizon, consistent with Mass DOT and the city's guidelines for traffic studies. We did do a review of the weekday morning commuter time period, the 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the morning time period, as well as the weekday afternoon, the 4 to 6 time period, and Saturday midday, so 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. For all of the study area intersections. In addition to the traffic volumes, we also did a safety review at each of the study area intersections. And there were a couple of locations where there were crash rates that were above the statewide average for a number of crashes that are occurring relative to the traffic volume passing through the intersection. All of those locations have recently seen improvements, either pedestrian enhancements, the installation of curb bump outs, signal timing changes at the Rantoul and Federal Street intersection that we do anticipate will help to relieve a lot of those crashes that are currently occurring or have historically been occurring at those locations. As part of our safety review, we did also look at sight distances coming out of the 2 site driveways and found that those sight distances are adequate to meet AASHTO recommendations for safe intersection sight distance for vehicles coming out of the driveway. We do anticipate kind of a 2-stage stopping as vehicles are coming out, where they will kind of stop first before they actually exit the garage to look for oncoming pedestrians, and then they will inch their vehicle up to the edge of the sidewalk to be able to see the oncoming traffic as they're leaving. But with that kind of 2-stage exit, they are able to see adequately down to the Bow Street intersection and up beyond the Federal Street intersection. So we also estimated the traffic that would be generated by the proposed development, and you can see, make sure I got the right button here. So you can see here in this column, this is the trips that would be generated upon completion of the proposed development with the residential units and the first floor retail and restaurant space during each of the peak hours. And this column here in the middle represents what is currently being generated by the existing uses on the site with the Dollar General, the Rent-A-Center, the office space, and the Bonefish Harry's that's there. So overall, when we look at this last column here, this represents what the net change in trips would be. So for the majority of the time periods, there's actually a net reduction in vehicle trips because the amount of commercial space is substantially being decreased on the site. But we do see an increase in traffic volumes during that weekday PM peak hour of about 27 trips over the course of the hour, with the majority of those obviously being leaving as people are traveling to work. And that's really because a lot of the retail restaurant space is not active during that time period. So that's why we see that increase. So we did distribute this traffic out over our study area network based on a journey to work model that looks at where people who live in Beverly are currently working and what travel patterns they would take to get there. And then we did an analysis of the traffic operations at each of the study area intersections. And this diagram here is kind of showing you in the worst time period, which is the weekday PM peak hour, what the levels of service looks like at each of the intersections and what the queues look like. So these colored bars represent, the color of the bars represents the level of service, and the length of those bars represents the queue that's occurring at each of the study area intersections. So queues at all of the study area intersections looked great, none of them extending back through other intersections. There were a couple of locations where we saw some declined levels of service, mainly coming out of Dane Street here and coming out of Knowlton Street onto Cabot Street, where during that weekday PM peak hour there is a level of service F there. They are both operating under capacity, but the Dane Street one is close to the capacity. So one of the comments that we got from Parking and Traffic Commission was to look at what we might be able to do for some improvements there to help with the capacity. So that's something we'll be evaluating before the next meeting. All of the other study area intersections, we're operating at level of service E or better, which is generally considered acceptable for a downtown urban setting for traffic operations during a peak period. And the maximum increase that we saw in delay at any of the study area intersections was 2 seconds per vehicle on any approach, and really negligible changes to the queues at any of the intersections. One of the big items I think kind of on everyone's mind is obviously the parking and how that's all going to be accommodated and how things will change with the public parking that's on site today going away. So what is being proposed is 124 parking spaces on the larger portion of the site within the parking garage, and 29 parking spaces in that surface lot that's across Chapman Street, for a total of 153 parking spaces on the site for that would be designated for the residential use. And that does meet zoning requirements for the residential use on the site. For the commercial parking, based on zoning, we would be required to provide a total of 45 parking spaces to meet zoning for the retail and the restaurant combined. And zoning does allow you to count the on-street parking spaces immediately on your site frontage. And you can kind of see here these red numbers represent the number of on-street parking spaces that are located along our site frontage. So there are a total of 19 on-street parking spaces right along the site frontage to help to meet that 45 parking space requirement, with an overflow of essentially 26 parking spaces that would need to be accommodated somewhere else. So zoning regulations do also allow you to count any public parking spaces that are located within a 500-foot radius of the site. So this blue area that you see here represents the 500-foot radius around the site. And the city did a downtown parking assessment back in 2017, and we took a look at that study to see what the availability of parking was in the downtown area within that 500-foot radius, and found that During the weekday evening peak period, which was the peak across the entire time that the study was done, it was done across an entire day for a weekday, beginning at about 6 a.m. going until 8 p.m., and same time periods on a Saturday as well. So during that Thursday evening peak time period, this shows you the number of parking spaces that were left empty in each of these areas that are shown here in these little light blue bubbles. And there's a total of 59 parking spaces that are left available. So more than adequate parking to be able to accommodate that 26 space overflow. So the other concern that we've heard from people is obviously that there's existing public parking on the site that is going away. And where is that going to be accommodated? So between the two lots, the existing surface lot in the back of the site here and the lot across the street, there are a total of 98 designated public parking spaces that will be removed as part of the project. But one thing to note is that there are existing commercial uses on the site with the Dollar General and the Rent-A-Center, the office space that will also be going away as part of this development. Those existing commercial uses generate a parking demand of 118 parking spaces. So even though we'll be removing that public parking, those 118 will be going away. So there will be a net reduction in parking demand of 73 parking spaces. So what we'll actually see when we compare that 98 parking spaces being removed, the 73 spaces in demand being reduced, is a net of 25 additional parking spaces.
For just a moment, 'cause
Yeah, not following the math on that.
I understand you're saying that the dollar store goes away, which will alleviate some level of parking. I missed the numbers.
Yep, so essentially comparing what is currently on the site for commercial use to what it will be there in the future, there's a reduction in commercial parking demand of 73 spaces.
Does that analysis take into account that there's going to be what I would call replacement commercial?
Yes, yeah, so the 73 reduction represents a net change in the parking demand from the commercial uses. Yes, so there's a demand of 118 now. In the future, it will be 45, so it's going down by 73 spaces.
Okay.
But obviously, the parking supply is also going down by 98 spaces. So the difference in the two means there's now a surplus of 25 vehicles that need to go somewhere else in the surrounding area. And with the parking study that was done by the city, it does show that there are 59 parking spaces available within that 500-foot radius to accommodate that displacement of parking, that 25 parking space displacement of vehicles. Does that answer your question on the parking? I don't want to move on from that if
I think we're going to have
numbers...
lots of questions, so that's okay. You can move on.
That's all right. So currently what we're proposing for off-site mitigation for this project, as Thad already alluded to, the sidewalks along the site frontage along Chapman Street and along Federal Street will all be reconstructed. There will be street trees that are added to those. New curb ramps installed at the intersection of Chapman and Federal Street, with new crosswalk to be able to get people across to the other side from that the parking lot over here. A comment that came from engineering was to do curb-to-curb resurfacing of Federal and Chapman Street along the site frontage, so that will also be completed. And then the section of Bow Street, along the northerly side of Bow Street between Chapman and Federal Street, that sidewalk is currently in rough condition. There's no real curb reveal there, and the sidewalk is kind of leaning into the roadway, so not ADA accessible either. And really, once the rest of the site gets completed, that'll be the only sidewalk section along that block that won't be in new and ADA accessible condition. So we're proposing to reconstruct that sidewalk along that section. Based on our meeting that we had earlier today with Parking and Traffic Commission, we are looking at some additional options for traffic flow and some pedestrian enhancements right in the surrounding area as well, that we'll look to evaluate and update you at the next meeting. And with that, I don't know if you want to close out.
Thank you, Rebecca. That is our presentation. Obviously, we didn't cover everything. We know there are going to be questions as we proceed, and happy to answer any questions that members have.
Questions for Attorney Samasco or members of her team? Did you want?
I don't have a question. I also just wanted to note that I have 6 comment letters from the public. There was 1 included in your packet, so I don't know if you want me to read those into the record or acknowledge them. I can do that.
Why don't we can hold off on those till later? Okay. Rodney, did you have a question?
I do. Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things you didn't go over was the affordable units. Do you want to talk a little bit about those?
Sure.
How many, where they're located, things of that nature?
Yes, absolutely. You do have submitted before the board an application for inclusionary housing that is in accordance with one of the options provided under the ordinance. All of these units are proposed to be on-site. The owners are proposing to allow a deeper level of affordability by taking advantage of the blended option for 10% of the market units, or 12 in this case, to be half of them be reserved for households of 80% AMI or less, and the balance for households of 60% AMI or less. I can give you a little bit more.
Can you talk a little bit about what that rent equates to?
Yes, we can absolutely provide that. And it is also provided in the board's materials as part of the marketing plan and the regulatory agreement. But basically for the, I'll start first with what those incomes look like, and then we can talk about what the rents look like. Okay. The maximum income limits for 60% AMI units ranges between $59,000 plus or minus and $84,000 plus or minus. That depends on the number of individuals in the household, from 1 to 4. For 80% units, the range is approximately $78,000 per year for income, and it goes as high as $111,000 per year for a family of 4.
So for the 1-bedroom units, how many people in your household can you have to qualify for that 1-bedroom?
You could have...
I assume not 4.
No, I mean, a 1-bedroom unit could potentially have a family of 2 that would be earners.
So a couple that's making up to how much?
If you bear with me, I can have the full numbers, but the range was between $59,000 and $84,000 per year. Those numbers are based on DHCD figures. I don't have the exact number, I'm sorry, for what a two-person would be.
Page 2 of the affirmative fair housing marketing and resident selection plan breaks it down by household size and gross income.
I know, yeah. Do you want me to find the detail on the
Yeah, I mean,
persons?
I may have it. I don't know if the public has it in hand. They may be wondering as well.
Well, again, I think the range is helpful.
Okay.
It is between the 59,000 and 84,000 would be for a family of 4, so that the family of 2 would be somewhere between there. And all of that translates to a rental range that's approximately $1,500 to almost $1,700, depending on the households. household numbers for the one-bedrooms at the 60% AMI level. For two-bedroom units, that would translate to approximately 1,700 and up to 2,100, depending on the number of the family members in that household. And then for the 80% AMI units, the numbers for the one-bedroom would be between $1,900 and $2,200 dollars per month, plus or minus, and two-bedroom units would be between $2,200 and almost $2,800 plus or minus. All of these numbers are obviously subject to annual update, so it's a moving target, but that's a picture of what it would look like based on today's numbers. And we have on the plans that are submitted, and actually also on the plans in front of you, we've called out which units are proposed to be the affordable units. You should just know that there will be an equal number of 60% and 80% units at each one-bedroom and two-bedroom level. And that we are proposing 8 one-bedrooms and 4 two-bedrooms to satisfy the requirement for 10% of the units, which translates to 12 units in total. The units are also dispersed across the floors of the project as required by the regulations. And in this case, there will be no differentiation between the affordable units and the market units. They will all have the same finishes. And in fact, these are proposed to be floating units, so they will float depending on availability in the unit. So in other words, there's no differentiation between those units and the rest of the units. So our application, I think, is complete. We've submitted the draft regulatory agreement. We've submitted a draft marketing plan that was prepared by Harbor Light, who is likely to be the affordable housing monitoring agent and conduct the lottery for the project.
Anything else, Rodney?
When you say that they're floating, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. DHCD really encourages developers to have floating units, and what that means is that when we start the project, we've designated these 12 units, which will be affordable, but as the units shift in terms of occupancy, sometimes it's the case that members or that unit occupants of the affordable units will no longer qualify, but they will still be living there. And in order to continue to comply, you need to make another unit available. And so that's when a developer says, okay, we'll provide another unit that's comparable to the one that's no longer affordable, that's called a floating unit, as opposed to having the same units always be designated for affordable, and then you're sort of waiting for those units to turn over. So this maximizes the availability.
Thank you.
I have a question that's related to that.
Go ahead, sir.
So what would happen then if someone were to no longer qualify but couldn't afford to continue renting out the building?
Well, they would.
They then end up in a situation where they would have to pay market rate or leave. And just thinking if someone were like no longer 60% AMI, but they're in that sort of slot you have designated, or they're no longer 80% AMI, would they then have to pay market rate rent in order to stay?
Once their lease is up, that would be, I can't, it would be a management issue, obviously, but.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that there's a window of affordability. So if you are qualified at a 60% level and you begin to earn more than 60%, you can earn up to a certain number. I think it may be as high as 100% before you're no longer qualified for that affordable unit. And then at that point, you would either have to be able to pay market rent in order to stay, or you'd have to move on.
Got it. Thanks.
It's good to know. Thank you.
Thanks, Addie.
You all set, Ronnie?
Thank you, Madam
Eric?
Chair.
So just to clarify on that for a second, 100% of median household income, right? Is that what you're talking about?
100% that I quoted, I said I believe that that's the number.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what it is.
But you're saying it would be, but it's the median income point
Yes,
once you
when
get
we
to
talk
that,
about a
as
percentage
opposed
of
to the
median.
below median. Okay. So I didn't notice utility costs in here. Are those wrapped into the rental rates that you're giving us here?
Let Addie answer that.
So there's a couple of different ways to do it. One is to charge the rent that is net of the utility allowances. And that way the resident is responsible for their consumption. And by being responsible for their consumption, they're typically more conservative in their usage. It just so happens that with the all-electric approach for heating and cooling, most of the load for the heating and cooling is actually on the common meter anyway. So we may find ourselves in a position where we are including heating and cooling with the rent and charging the gross number, and then the resident doesn't have a bill associated with their heating and cooling.
So
we don't know for certain yet.
So
but it's-
yes or no in the numbers that we've been given here to show?
Those
does
are
that-
net of utility allowances.
That's, so.
Those are net of utility
Net.
allowances. Yes.
So tell me what that means. I'm sorry, net of means,
Meaning the DHCD.
does it
and
include
HUD
the utility
No,
allowance?
it doesn't. It's net of utilities, meaning the tenant has to pay the utilities
The
on
tenant
top
will
of
pay
the rent.
utility on top of
That's
the rent.
actually what I wanted to have
Yeah.
on the record, so thank you.
Yes.
Okay. That's, so, and these are based, I know that this is in the same tract, and I know this isn't how the formula works, but I just want to have this be part of the discussion. The same census tract to look at what the actual median income is for the families who are living in this district now. Also happens to be the same as Depot 2. We remember those numbers, right? It's Census Tract 2174. So this property is coming into Census Tract 2174 that has what may be different from the guidelines that are being used to develop what these are. But they're also not reflective of what the median income is for the people who are actually residing in this neighborhood right now. So I'd like you to think about that, and then maybe we can have a discussion at the next meeting about it, because I anticipate that
We
we'll
can look
go
at that.
there. And then the other discussion I wanted to have is wrapped into that, that goes to the character, the impact, on the neighborhood. There are several different topics that are there, and one of them is the cost of rents. And I understand that, no one developer bears the burden of stemming the tide of the cost of housing, overall, and what's happening with skyrocketing rents around the country. But I want to have a real discussion about what this means in terms of the type of rents that these units are going to go for, and what that impact is going to be, and whether it's different or not from what exists in terms of existing housing. I understand these are new housing units, okay? But if we reverse engineered the formula that you're looking at to determine what these rents are, I'm still having, I can't reverse engineer it to find out what you are thinking or planning when you introduce this, the rents are going to be for the 2-bedroom units and the 1-bedroom units. If the affordable 2-bedroom unit at the moderate rate costs almost $3,000 a month, I'm really kind of wondering what the market rate is going to be for a 2-bedroom unit in this building, in this city, in this neighborhood, and what impact that's going to have. So if you could actually present those numbers, maybe the next meeting, unless you have them now, I really would like to know what the remaining 100 units market rates are going to be.
It'll be comparable to other new projects in the city of Beverly. That's the market, that's the target.
Yeah, I understand that, but I think that rather than just saying comparable, it would be good to have us know what it is we're voting on. That would be very helpful. And I appreciate your position in it, because you're working in a for-profit world, capitalist society, but just trying to think about what's happening. Yeah. So those are sort of the tip of the iceberg of my rental and income questions. So thank you for bringing that information to the next meeting.
Could I just follow up, or did you have a follow-up to Derek?
I was going to add to Derek.
Please, go ahead, please.
Just to add to Derek, when you do present around, I heard it said that the studios, the artist studios would be affordable, but I didn't hear anything about sort of how is that calculated, what are the details on that? So I think it makes sense to kind of cover at the same time. I'd be just curious how you're thinking about that and how it compares both in quantity of studio space as well as how you're thinking about the cost and why it...
Our thought process there is there's obviously studios there today that are charging a rent today. It's going to be somewhere in line with where studios are today. Oh, I need to stand up.
Yes, you do. Thank you.
I think, but similar to Derek's comments, I think it'd be fine to take it at that point. I don't think you necessarily have to take it now, but would be
At that point,
interested.
if you want, that's fine. Our premise was they're comparable to rents that are there today.
That's great. I think we'd just love a little bit more detail in terms of how many are there today, how many will be there, what are the costs today, what would the costs be, how do you calculate it? All that would be helpful context. That's it for me.
Okay. Mr. Smasko, could I ask you a question? I'm wondering, so when I was thinking about this, and at 6:30 this morning, I was driving around down there, it strikes me that if we look at that street, we've got back-to-back very large buildings, right? Your building takes up an entire block. I guess as we head down, I guess Bow Street, right?
Federal?
Federal, I'm sorry. Well, Federal or Bow, basically.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then you've got that little vacant lot that you'll use for, you hope to use for additional parking.
Yeah.
And then behind that is another large building, correct?
Yes.
McLean Building, thank you. I'll be honest with you, and I know it's a by right plan, I am bothered by buildings of this size and dimension creeping their way back from Cabot Street into the neighborhood. That's just my comment. I understand what we're dealing with here. But secondly, given that it's a by right plan, I'm wondering if there could be more of an effort to incorporate some of the characteristics of the neighborhood instead of the yellow brick of the facade of the historic building. I understand it's probably too late, but I guess in some of these projects, for what it's worth, and it's just me, I would personally like to see us perhaps begin to think about moving away from the brick and start to capture some of what you see in these neighborhoods. You know, a lot of two families, just a little bit warmer, a little bit more, I guess I call it more New England-y. And that's just my comment. But the other comment that I had was, I remember in sort of March or April of 2020, maybe Darlene, you can talk to this. I remember getting a phone call from a consultant that the city had hired, and they were very concerned about sort of the historical nature of things and trying to come up with a plan that focused on the streets that ran from Cabot Street to Rantoul Street, looking at what they could do to protect the housing that's there. And I just was wondering where that, I forget the guy's name. He was a consultant.
I think that was probably working on our preservation plan.
Yes.
Yes, and he was probably talking about a neighborhood conservation district, which was one of the strategies in the preservation plan for that area.
Okay.
The Historic District Commission has prepared a draft of that, but it's not adopted yet. It would relate to the existing homes.
Can I
Please,
make
please,
an effort to respond?
please.
We made a decision early to not tear down the building on Cabot, not add 3 or 4 stories to it, because we all understand that people really like Cabot the way it is. So our decision to do that resulted in more of mass of this project, heading to the back. So that there were options to do 5 stories on Cabot or 4 and step it back, but we felt really it was important to keep the flow of Cabot Street as it is. So that was a decision we made. The feedback we get is that was a good decision. Clearly, when you push that mass back, you have more mass, toward the back of the site. One thing we did look at was how much open there is here, the height of that building, and even the height of the school, and even to some extent Oddfellows, that it felt like the mass of the building kind of could fit here reasonably well. And in the interest of time, I didn't get into the nuance of the materials. It's not our intention to take the bright orange brick and use it in the new section. It's to do a complementary brick that is that warmer tone, more of a golden tone, as opposed to, say, a red tone. We think that the golden tone is warmer and more fitting for the residential notion than it would be if it was red brick. Although the apartment building further back has a fair amount of red brick in it, right? As does the bank, as does the school. So you could argue one way or the other. We like the relief that we get from that. And then last, I'd say that we discovered on the back side of, I think it's 131 Rantoul, when we did a very simple clapboarded, almost neutral color with no trim highlights, that it did a pretty good job of transitioning from what is clearly a tall zoned commercial street to the neighborhood. And so what I would show you, if I can get to is that a fair bit of this facade is more of a wooden clapboarded kind of feel that works with the brick. We didn't make it a giant brick box. We actually did break it and push back and use what I would call a more residential feeling material. It's a big building in a zone that allows, for big buildings, and we do all we can to reduce the apparent mass, right? Which is the attic story, it's setting it back, it's the balconies, it's the base that has the cornice. So that's the tack we took. And we think, from my view, as someone who lives in the city and goes up and down Cabot, we think we did a nice job of not affecting Cabot Street with this project in terms of its visual impact. There is a lot of room around those back streets. We feel that it could take that mass, and that was the tack that we took. I hope that begins to answer your question.
Oh, it does, it does. I mean, I understand it's by right, so I guess I would respectfully disagree. I think it's too massive for the neighborhood.
I agree. Real quick, it kind of has that ink block feel, right? The Harrison Ave ink block, kind of in the middle of Beverly. So they're definitely, I think, an opportunity missed to look at the character of that abutting neighborhood and kind of, whether it's taper it to the middle. I mean, just looking at your Bowen Chapman Street visual here, you have that single-family home right on the corner. It's just, it's like it's on that island now. And I think this visual right here really represents what you're talking about, which is that disconnect from the existing neighborhood. That being said, we're not a design review committee here, so it's kind of neither here nor there. But to that point, talk a little bit about 100 and, how many units? 130. 113, how did you get to that place?
Those are my knees cracking, by the way. Generally speaking, all of these projects are based on the parking count, and you work the parking count to develop what the unit count will be. And there's some magic that it seems to be that when you have a base, you can get usually 3 or 4 stories of building on top of it. So that's basically how it was developed. We are working for an experienced developer who has to deal with going out and borrowing money and making the thing, I know you don't want to hear that, but making the thing work.
We understand.
Who's pushing us for efficiencies and making the volume work. And our job is to do our best job, balancing all of that as architects, to get the best looking, best functioning building for the city and for the owner. So that's where the 113 came from.
So being, a 5-minute walking distance from Beverly Depot commuter rail, how did that sort of kind of quasi-transit-oriented development, if you would, how does that impact the traffic count? I mean, is this purely we needed to get a certain amount of parking units, so we had to build up?
I think that's probably fair. I think as a former board member of Main Streets, the idea was you got to get people living downtown in order to make the retail stores and the restaurants and places like the Cabot work. This is 113 units, call it 150 people that will be working in our using our restaurants, using our retail. We hope staying in Beverly, not getting in their cars and driving, and part of that is having the bikes work, having really clear pedestrian access points, which we've provided, to encourage folks not to get in their cars and drive. The greenest places in the world are the ones that are the most dense because they require the least amount of energy per person and the least amount of carbon per person. So we're creating some density here. I'm a little bit out of my lane here, but I don't know of any other property in Beverly that goes back a full block that's this size. I don't see another 113-unit project coming into Beverly on Cabot Street. There may be some others, but I don't know how you could get the parking to work to support, because this is all, if you don't have the parking in Beverly in a residential, in a CC zone, you can't build a residential unit. You must provide the parking for it. So the site sizes are going to limit the amount of parking, which is therefore going to limit the amount of units.
But Mr. Samasco, nobody saw this coming down the pike either.
Well, respectfully, I know several people who did.
Well, because you're intimately involved in this, but I, among others, were shocked to know that even that lot was privately owned.
I see. Sure.
Derek?
So you raised a good point when you talked about, people being able to walk and things, to get to shops. And so, and I'm also thinking of the traffic report and that nice bubble that you had of the 500-foot radius around. And I'm thinking right now of all the people, and maybe a little bit beyond that, who actually live there now and walk there now, and use and count on the retail, in particular the Family Dollar store that's there now for groceries. And we're not talking about just a few people. We're talking about many, many, many college students. We're talking about many, many, many seniors at the McLean building. We're talking about a lot of people. So I'm curious as to the decisions that were made in cutting back the commercial space. And, it would be nice to have a grocer or some sort of store that isn't going to leave a void in that area. This is a store that a lot of people go to. And I'm shocked just walking around the block today. I had 3 different, completely separate people talked to me about, because I guess they saw my jacket and were like, what's he walking around for? And they got into discussion with them, and they randomly said, or not necessarily randomly said, that this is going to be a huge loss for the neighborhood, having a store that has food and supplies and things like that around that's within walking distance. And so I'm just curious as to what if you could go over the plan for the commercial space again, it would be helpful.
Which way the plans look.
And I would just follow up and ask you, Mr. Samasco, talk about how much commercial space is there now, and what will the square footage there be after construction?
Stefano, maybe you can help me on the existing condition. The proposed conditions is 5,000 square feet in these two spaces that you see here and here. I'm not counting some support basement space, storage space that goes with them. The current 17.5 is the current building, which the Family Dollar extends back more like this, and then there's a couple one-story additions to the Rena Center and to Bonefish.
And the space that you have for that, you predetermined for restaurant and what else on the other side?
It's available for at least a small grocer could get.
And then on the second floor of that space?
That is rental apartment units and potentially
The apartments come
studios.
straight to the front.
Yeah. The building had a natural line here. This line right here is where the building goes from 2 stories to 1 story. And that was the natural point to break it and add. Part of that was the limited impact on Cabot. Part of that was the firewall and some other code issues that are related. We don't probably have to get into the details of that, but it was a nice natural break from which to start the taller building. Clearly, there's parking within the footprint also of that space too.
But that frontal commercial space is how many levels of commercial space?
Just one.
Just one, and
Yes.
above it is rental?
Yes, sir.
Apartment stuff. And, okay, so that's a lost commercial space from what's there now?
Yeah, the 17.
Part of the
What's the
reduction from the
makeup of that?
17.5?
What's the makeup of that space, though? Is it commercial or is it retail? Because if there's office space, that's markedly different in terms of the impact that you're talking about. Because the impacts you're talking about are where are people going to shop, not where are people going to work in an office. Because it's, the second floor is office, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So there's an additional 6,000 square feet of office on the second floor, above and beyond that 17.
Oh, okay.
Of the Bonefish.
Okay.
The Rent Center and the Family Dollar.
All right.
And you're counting that as the artist studios space, the 30 or so artists?
The 6,000, yeah.
Yeah. And that's gone?
Yeah, I know there's discussions now about adding some of that back in now.
And what's the square footage of one unit?
In the proposed?
And the proposal is to take one unit and turn it into 4 studios?
They're like 350 each.
About a total of 1,400 for 4, more or less. So 350 each. Generally speaking, it's kind of a one-room, artist studio. No living place to practice your art.
And there are approximately 30 studios there now?
That number sounds high, but I think for next time we can get you the numbers.
17?
That sounds like more like
Okay.
the number. Yes. Yes. We may, for the next meeting, if it's helpful, break out the Bonefish Harry's restaurant square footage from the Rena Center square footage from the Family Dollar, though the Rena Center and Family Dollar are essentially retail, and the Bonefish is obviously a restaurant. If that would help.
Madam Chair, I had 2 other
Sure,
quick
please.
questions. One has to do with parking. I'm wondering if you did in your analysis, the parking, currently, when there's a snow emergency in the city, the neighbors from that whole area can't park on the street, and they'll park right now in that existing lot. So during a snow emergency, where are these people going to park? So that's something I'd like you to think about and come back with an analysis of how many of spaces currently, are going to have to find, within that little matrix you had. So that's another question. And then, I'm not sure if other members of the board, I'm sure some of you do remember when we approved the West Dane Street apartment project that actually had the building mostly on stilts so that there could be parking underneath, and the ensuing significant pest control issues that came from that. And so here we have a building that is approximately 10 times bigger than that project, with raised parking. So I'm just curious as to whether you could come back with what the pest control is going to be for this project throughout.
We can do that. That's part of the comments from the Board of Health, and we have some new suggestions as to that.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Madam Chair?
Please.
I think Mr. Beckwith's question touches on another subject here, which is what happens with the loss of the public parking that is unfortunately on private land and not public land. And I think it's important for the board to understand and for members of the public to understand that there are continuous conversations going on with the applicant, with the planning department, with engineering, with the mayor's office, to see what we can do to assist the city in coming up with a solution. And the reality is that this project is going to generate a significant amount of tax revenue that could be made available to assist with a parking solution. We don't have that solution yet, but I can tell you we're talking about everything from an additional story in the building, whether that's underground or above ground, to accommodate on the site public parking. The applicant is very happy to engage in those conversations with the city. We are also, the design team is working with the city to explore what options may be available at other public parking spaces, across the city to build more infrastructure. So I think we expect that as this project makes its way through the board, that we hope to have some more information to share with the board. We want you to know that questions about what happens during a snow emergency, we obviously can't answer that right now because the parking is going away. The expectation and the hope is that we will be finding a way to replenish probably not all of the parking, but a significant portion.
Thank you. I want to take a moment before we open this up to public comment to, there's so much misinformation. I make the foolish mistake of getting on Facebook and looking at the Beverly community page, and I know. But I think a little bit of going back to fundamentals just for 2 minutes might be helpful. First of all, the city doesn't own this property. And so the city, a private third party owns this property. The City of Beverly cannot tell any private property owner to whom they can sell and to whom they can't sell. So when people on Facebook or whatever social media start to blame the city or blame the planning department or blame the planning board or whomever, you have to just remember that just as you and I would get upset if the City of Beverly told us that we can't sell our property to some person, it's the same way for a commercial or an industrial or a retail piece of land. A private owner has the right to sell that property to to whomever they want, even if it's a developer, and I say that tongue-in-cheek. I mean, in terms of, you know, the negative aspect of that, because I don't mean that. But it's true, a private owner of real estate can sell their property to whom they want. The city cannot block it, they can't do anything about it. So let's start with that premise. Then, what can this developer who buys the property do? In this case, you've heard the term repeatedly. This is a by-right plan. This developer has come in, and the plan that he has proposed meets all of the zoning requirements. They're not looking for special permits. They're not looking for any variances. It is a by-right plan. The zoning requirements have been met, all of them, without any special requests being made to this planning. They have the right to build it, okay? People can love it, people can hate it, but there's not a whole lot that can be done, frankly, to prevent it, because they have done it in accordance with the zoning. If you don't like the zoning, if you don't like what's being allowed here, if you don't like what's being built here, the people you should be talking to are your city councilors. They are in charge of zoning. But I just want to make sure that we clear up a lot of this misinformation that, you know, that the city should do this and the city should prevent that. The city can't. Any one of us would have a fit if the city told us that we couldn't sell our property to a third party. The same thing is here. The city can't block it, okay? And frankly, as much as I'm not a huge fan of this project, to be frank with you, and I think I've made that clear tonight, there's not a lot that we can do to block it, because it is a by-right plan. They meet all of the zoning requirements. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean for anybody who wants to get up and speak for it or against it, they're certainly welcome. But I hope we can stop this blame game, because it's just, it's not helpful, and it's inaccurate, and it just perpetuates misinformation. So I needed to get that sort of off my chest, and I hope it's helpful, especially to the listening and watching audience. That being said, it's 10 minutes of 9. We will be back for another session, but we will hear some people tonight if they want to be heard. So if anybody wants to be heard on this project, I welcome them to form a line and head to the podium, state your name and your address, and you can say your piece.
May I just add to your point?
Please do.
Just that the planning board does have the authority to make reasonable conditions on the project.
Right, but we
That are
can't.
related to.
Right. We can impose conditions, but we can't stop the project because it's by right.
Ellen, it doesn't matter if they sign in or not. That's not for speaking.
Could you state your name and your address for the record, please?
Yes. Hi, I'm Vivian Hudgens. I live at 59 Park Street in Beverly. I'm a resident, and I'm also an artist who has been here for quite some time. I have 2 points listening to the plan that was brought up. One point is going back to the retail and grocery availability in the town. There's not really anywhere else besides like Dollar Tree, which is kind of out of the way from the middle of the town to go and walk to buy groceries and other means for a lot of the residents and the students who walk and they don't have a car or they just have a bike or a skateboard or whatever. And so Family Dollar does provide like a big essential like grocery store essentially for those people. And it is something that I was wondering if there's going to be an alternative if this plan is to go on for those people, myself included. And then another point is I think that art is a very big, essential part of Beverly. It's what has made Beverly, and it is what attracts people to Beverly. There's an art college right in the center of the town. Many students need a place after college to go and make art, and they usually end up living in this town afterwards, as well as other artists in residence. There's only right now 17 studio spaces on Cabbage Street. The 4 alternative spaces don't sound like they will be big enough or enough in general as an alternative to these 17 spaces, and there's not that many art studio or maker spaces around the town in general. So I feel that it's a bit of an insult to the artists and creative community, and even the residential and historical community in Beverly. And I'm just wondering if there's going to be any more alternative ideas for that within the town. And that's what I would like to say. Thank you for listening.
Hello, my name is Sylvia Berger. I reside at 23 Vestry Street in Beverly, and I also rent out one of the units at 222 Cabot Street. I was born and raised in Beverly. I went to Cove Elementary, I went to Briscoe Middle School, I went to Beverly High School, but I also went to Montserrat. So to say that this town is my home and that I love this town would be an understatement. And I really, as all of you are aware, the constant development of this town is a blessing for some, but a problem for many. And recently, this problem has become personal to me and many others. This town is promised to be a vibrant arts district. Part of the reason I have remained here for such a long period of my life is because of that. In April, I was over the moon. I had acquired a studio finally. I have been going to that studio space since I was a small child, so that was a really big deal for me. And about a week later, I received a call saying that there was going to be this massive development. And obviously, I was quite upset, but I am not alone in this. I share this issue with 17 other artists who also work in and enjoy this crucial space for artists downtown. So why not find another art studio, some of you might ask me. I'm sure there's some available. Well, my answer to you would be that it's not that easy. There is only one other art studio space in the entire city, Porter Mills, and the wait list for that is about 1 to 2 years. So considering that all of the artists who have been displaced from 222 Cabot Street only have till I would say late fall at very best to find a new place. That's going to leave a lot of people displaced. I want so badly for Beverly to remain the beautiful, vibrant art district I was so inspired by when I was a young child. But for this to happen, we must create space for artists that adds so much to this community we call an art district. Art is for everyone. It adds such a vital culture to our beachside town. If there is no space for us to practice our craft in Beverly, we will have to find other towns to create work in. And we all know that once something is gone, it's hard to get back. And I know how much the art district means to all of you. And I ask with hope and integrity that we can work together to not just maintain this vibrant art district, but to even expand it and create space for artists in the future. I know that since the last meeting, there has been talk of 4 units, and I think that that's wonderful, and I so appreciate everyone taking that into consideration. But unfortunately, 4 is just not enough. Like I mentioned, there's 17 units, so that still leaves 13 artists displaced. And so thank you so much for all of your consideration and listening to me. I'm done.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Margaret Graves, and I reside at 24 Federal Street. And my concern is where I am, the last house on the right next to the McLean Building, that we oftentimes, we have a lot of wrong-way drivers coming down. So my concern is, or my question is to the people who have done the traffic studies, will there be an exit that will either direct you down Bow Street or Chapman? And then, do you know what I mean? Like, so it's not, because people routinely turn onto Federal Street in the wrong direction. And when I say that, it's probably about 7 a week, just sitting out on the patio that we can see the headlights coming down. So that's a concern there. I'm also concerned regarding the elderly housing, or the mixed housing that's run by the Beverly Housing Authority next door. They have probably, and I haven't counted, but I think it's about 10 public spots that are used as for parking for the elderly housing building. So I'm concerned where there's already not enough parking for the residents of the McLean Building, if there is a plan in place to work with the Beverly Housing Authority to accommodate those residents of the McLean Building who will be losing their spots. And then, of course, the issue of parking, which I'll be interested to listen, and I'll speak with Estelle about public parking, because as residents who live in the neighborhood, who are fortunate to have off-street parking, which we do, when there are events downtown, whether it's Main Streets, whether there's a great concert at the Cabot, or what have you, whatever venue, whatever restaurant, parking on the weekends is a premium. Whether it is having guests over or even just trying to find parking for those venues is very difficult on the weekend evenings or even on a weeknight where the restaurants are busy. And I know we want to add business downtown. I completely understand it. As someone who bought downtown and has resided downtown for 22 years, I think it's really important just to take a look at the neighborhood and how it's going to impact the parking, because I know that you guys spoke to the additional parking being on the streets. So a lot of that parking is not just for the restaurants or the commercial space that's right there, immediately there. So I know that there's at least 90 spots that we're losing on one side, and that doesn't include the additional parking on the opposite side for the elderly housing. And then the rodent issue, which I brought up at a Ward 2 civic meeting, because there was a great influx of rodents that came up the hill with all the building and whatnot down on Rantoul. So it's definitely a concern for a lot of the neighbors and the residents of our surrounding neighborhoods. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Estelle Rand. I live at 3 Agate Street, and I'm also the city councilor for Ward 2. And first, I want to thank the planning board for your thoughtful questions. I heard a lot of questions that are very much in line with what I've been hearing from constituents and concerns I have myself. And also a special thank you to Chair Hutchinson's, message to us all. Let's not play the blame game and get some facts straight. I do think it is on the city that we've known for decades that lot is privately owned. I do think that that's something that actually even Mayor Scanlon tried to work on and has kind of just slipped through the cracks, and now here we are. So I guess I want to say about the project first that I think the preservation of the frontage and the building on Cabot is thoughtful. And I don't want that to get lost in the conversation. I think we all care very much about the way Cabot Street appears when we come up and down. And so I think that is a really important part of the project design. And I do want to challenge Leggett and McCall to really think about community needs as you're designing and thinking about the commercial space. I mean, we've already heard a little bit about how valuable the dollar store is, and that's really not to be underestimated. I know the first meeting I had with you, I brought up 2 issues, the dollar store and the artist spaces. So I think you're going to keep hearing that from me and as people kind of continue to weigh in on this issue. I really encourage you to close your eyes and think, wow, what does Cabot Street really need? What do the people who live downtown really need? I'm not so sure that it's another restaurant, though I understand we're taking space away that houses a restaurant now. I just really want to encourage you to think about meeting community needs, not above sort of a bottom line that might be a little bit easier to get, though I know filling a commercial space is not easy. I just think take the extra time and be that much more passionate about Beverly, which I know a lot of your team lives here and loves Beverly the same way that we do. So take that extra time and passion to really consider what the community needs are and how to meet them. And then I just also want to share that I think the 4 artist units is a fantastic start, and I did not expect to see that tonight, so I appreciate that step in the right direction. And I think that there's, you know, if you can please wrap your mind around what our young leaders are saying about the fact that this is in an arts district, and part of what made this an arts district are those studios. So taking that away is not the problem of the developer, but it could be a solution that as a community-minded developer that you present and bring to the table, and that I would celebrate wholeheartedly. So I hope we still have work to do on that, and I hope there's the potential to add units there. I'm happy to continue the conversation, so thank you.
Hi. Can you hear me? Yes. So my name is Mike Mendes. So I own the building 4 Chapman Street. So I'm literally like on the other side of this building that you guys are building. So I completely understand about the whole by right thing. And a lot of what I had like written down, people have talked about. One thing I did want to bring up was I understand it's like a 5-story building, and how is that going to affect like sunlight? So like on my property, am I going to always be in the shade now? I don't know. I have to look at the coordinates west, east to west, but that was just one thing I wanted to bring up. The other thing is I understand that you made the Cabot Street one, like tried to make it preserve. Is there open discussion about the other side, like my side on Chapman, that make that side look a little prettier somehow? I mean, like I said, I understand it's by right. I was hoping I could have a conversation with you guys, maybe make it a little prettier on that side. Also, I understand the residential, the commercial side, because actually, I used to go to Bell Market, which was the old Burger King place. Actually, it's a current burger. That was a great place because I'd run there if I needed eggs. And now dollar stores. So hopefully something would come up. And also with parking, I know that you guys, there was at the end of this conversation, this talk about maybe going down, like maybe another level, like 2 or 3 levels down or something, so that you would then have parking, because being across from the parking lot right now, I can tell you during a snow emergency, people flood to that place. I mean, if you're not there when those blue lights start flickering on, then you're going to be parking. I don't know where you're going to go park. But so the snow emergency definitely has effect on it. And I was, before this meeting, I was like, okay, I understand this big lot. I didn't realize that the second lot was also part of that. Because I was like, well, if I have to, I could just walk. I could park there. I guess I can't now. So, and so, yeah, the other thing is, like, during the big building creation, hopefully there won't be, like, mice and other things scuttering from that location to my house. And so, the other thing, yeah, going back, so my house is a nice Victorian house. It was actually built in 1900, so it's a fairly old 3-family house. And so I was hoping that, yeah, we could have a conversation that bring the Victoria, somehow make the Chapman and Federal and Bow Street look conform to the rest of the houses somehow. And I think that's it.
Sir, could I just ask you two questions? One is your home address for the record, please.
Oh, 4 Chapman Street.
And is that
Oh.
also, when you keep referencing a home, your house, is that at 4 Chapman?
Okay, so my actual physical address that I like, my primary residence is 129 Cabot Street in Newton, Mass.
Okay.
Okay,
And you're referencing a property on Chapman Street, what's that address?
that's 4 Chapman Street.
Okay, thank you, that's it.
Oh, that was questions?
Yep,
Okay, and so I think that's really what I wanted to bring up. Hopefully
thank you very much.
Hopefully we can talk.
Hi, Hannah Bowen. I live at 13 Thorndike Street, right up the street. I'm also an at-large counselor, but speaking tonight purely in my personal capacity as a neighbor. And really appreciate the opportunity for there to be a public hearing and a public conversation, and think it's fitting that whether or not it's tied to formal approval, it's part of our planning process, because a development of this size really needs to be part of our plan for the whole downtown and for our city. And so would echo a lot of what's already been said around, thinking really carefully about the neighborhood's needs and the city's needs in this design. Appreciate where that is being taken into consideration so far. But I do share concerns about the retail space. I also shop there. I walk all over the neighborhood and stop in for things. The artist space, and really appreciate the creative thinking there. Also concerned about the affordability pieces, and would love to further that conversation. Thinking for myself, I am in that zone. I am a renter. I earn below the area mean income for a one-person household. And it would be an increase in rent if I were to move into this building from a couple blocks away. So just think about, those of us in that actual position, what we would be facing with these changes. And so I very much support the idea of additional housing production, but the type of housing, the style of housing, that all really matters, and the price of the housing as well. And so when you think about the design, I know it's already pretty far along at this stage, but I would push you to think a little bit more about who's going to live in this space, how are they going to use it, how are they going to integrate into our downtown and into this neighborhood in particular. And the use of some of the amenities proposed in this building, the common spaces, the courtyard, that are limited to residents, sort of gives it that feel like you might have, a building in a neighborhood that doesn't have a lot of its own amenities. You go home to your fortress, you have everything you need. You go inside through your parking garage, you don't see anybody else in the neighborhood. That's not why people move to downtown Beverly. And that's not why we want people to move to downtown Beverly. We want people activated in those retail spaces, in those public spaces, in our public parks, out on the sidewalks, greeting each other, building community. That's what we love about it here. And I think I've seen in some of the other building plan discussions some conversations about different ways of doing that. If we think about what we're hearing tonight about sort of the two sides of this building being almost in two different neighborhood feels, could you think about the backside of that building being more townhouse style, somehow connected to the larger part of the building? Somehow bringing in that sort of mix of household types and people who aren't necessarily going to be able to pay that much more to be able to have the nice gym, but could, walk to one of the many small studios that offer fitness classes in the neighborhood that are already there. Can we think about ways to be more supportive of, holistic growth in the neighborhood when we bring in 150 new residents who are going to want to be part of this community, but who we also need to sort of build structures to support their, full lifestyle, their artistry and their shopping and their dining out, just like everybody else in the neighborhood, and not sort of locking them into a really nice, pretty big building, but that doesn't fully integrate with the rest of the neighborhood. So that's what I'm thinking about, and appreciate the opportunity to have that conversation.
Thank you, Councilor.
Hi, my name's Patty Solano. I live at 1 Fieldstone Lane in Beverly, Mass., but I'm the owner of 19 Federal Street in Beverly. Born and raised in Beverly. Thank you for all your comments. I agree with everything everybody said. I just wanted to stress that they were talking about a 2017 parking study. I believe that's before we went permit parking in this whole area and cut the time limits, of how long you could park there for, if you are a resident or non-resident. So when you look at the parking, I think you need to consider that you need something more new than that study, because since they changed that whole thing, it's really impacted the downtown parking a lot. The bump outs up all over the place downtown have considerably taken up a lot of spots downtown that people could park at to go to these stores. And also, like, now we have like the restaurants that basically, which is great through COVID, they have sidewalk space, but that takes up additional parking space. So if I wasn't from Beverly, I wouldn't know where to park. And I think a lot of times that lot that we all go to, like, because there's no parking in those neighborhoods, and we park there overnight, or our tenants park there overnight, because it's a very condensed area, snowstorm, like everybody said. We know it's there, but a lot of people don't. But even, you have to consider the other parking spots that they just put in solar lights, or solar panels or something. That took up extra parking spaces just to hold the solar banner. So I think we need to think about the big picture with the parking, and, you talk about we borrow spaces within 500 square feet, and like, does anybody even know where those spaces are? Because now I think we're borrowing space from St. Mary's School because of that solar panels, because they cut, parking. But if I didn't read it in the paper, I wouldn't know that. And if you're visiting the city, you would definitely not know that. So I think parking is going to be a real big issue. And I also want to bring up the fact that on Chapman Street, according to that, it sounds like the 2 exit points where the garage are on Chapman Street. Currently, and my sister took a picture of it today, that side of Chapman Street is full of cars. You never used to be able to park there, but then after they changed the parking, whatever, everybody parks there. So now, are we still going to be allowed to park on that street with this building here? And what kind of problem is that going to cause when people try to get out of the garage and you can barely see 2 feet in front of you? You know what I mean? It's very tight. I agree with you when you said everybody goes down Federal Street the wrong way. Been happening for years. And you're like, they're like, where you going? And then what's going to happen to St. Mary's? Is the same thing going to happen to St. Mary's? I mean, like, we're just going to be inundated with these huge, like, I can see the steeple from my house now. I'm not going to be seeing nothing from my house now. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Gabrielle Burgess. I live at 394 Rantoul. I rent out a studio space in the building, one of the art studio spaces. I just wanted, one thing that I hadn't heard brought up was what happens in October with the parking situation. It's the whole area gets I don't need to tell you guys, the whole area gets flooded. But I think that wasn't something I had heard brought up yet. And then the snow ban was something I definitely wanted to support. I know Montserrat students who had rented out apartment buildings and had to walk across town in really dangerous conditions, 6 feet of snow, 19 years old, 18 years old. I feel like it's honestly kind of dangerous. Like, I worry for my friends, I worry for other students coming into the area. And I recognize that's also a Montserrat thing, might not be for here, but I just wanted to also say thank you for listening and being responsive towards the art studio space, and also keeping the historical front of the building. I've also been aspiring to live here since I was a little kid from a little town in Western Mass, and I came to this town as a kid with my grandparents who lived in Danvers, and I wanted nothing more than to be here. And now I am finally here and I'd like to stay, and I'd like for me and my friends to continue to be a part of the creative culture in this area and be able to live and work here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Beatrice Hines, 17 Conan Street. And I have relatives that are handicapped that live uptown and use the Family Dollar as their only source of grocery shopping and getting sundries. And with the parking so I would hope that some alternative business is going to come downtown so that these folks, handicapped folks with no car and no money, very limited finances, have a source of getting groceries. The parking study was done with the emphasis on retail and commercial, but this is a residential neighborhood, and the McLean building has lots of handicapped people in it who go to Family Dollar with their walkers, but also they get into that other lot, they get visiting nurses, home care workers, health care workers, social workers, all coming to visit that high-rise with the indigent people in it. And now there'll be no place for their caregivers to come. So as an alternative with the planning board, I would like to suggest that we no longer tie up the remaining parking places that we have by installing electric vehicle charging stations. We've put electric vehicle charging stations onto in back of the spear post and whatever, and that ties up the parking for hours as someone charges. So maybe we should stop installing charging stations on the rest of our parking spaces. That might be a solution to the lack of parking downtown. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Peter Johnson, 677 Hale Street, here in Beverly. My comments are going to be a little bit broader in nature, addressing Cabot Street from this project southwest to the bridge. After Depot 2, my recurring nightmare has been the canyonization of Cabot Street, sort of to the point of 5-story buildings, and as we have all along Rantoul. And the nightmare ran from maybe the Ward House all the way up to historic Beverly, picking up Salerno's, Winfrey's, who knows what next, and the whole thing being developed as 5-story buildings by right. This developer, who has astutely leapfrogged right to the center of the city, brilliant on their part, proposing a building with 5 stories opposite 2 of the 3 churches in the center of town. Here in the center, we have buildings of stature and height. They have character. They've been here forever. City Hall, across the street, the Oddfellows Building, the First Baptist Church, the Unitarian Church, and St. Mary's. As I said, these are historic and distinctive. They're tall, but they serve as a focal point for the city, for our main street. While this project does offer sensitivity to height by stepping back, and I do appreciate that, I urge the planning board and the planning department not to allow this to become the reference point. Okay, we have this project now. Here we go, down the street, marching toward the bridge, probably while another phalanx is coming up from the bridge. I understand, echoing Ms. Hutchinson's comments, the concern about scale, and she knows I share those. I understand that the planning department is developing a tiered system for height, at least along Cabot, and maybe along some of the latter streets, with a 5-story tier, a 4-story tier, a 3-story tier. I don't know where that is in development, but I do urge the city to address this concern with real urgency, because I can tell you the developers are looking at it with real urgency. Get in quick before the zoning changes. if those buildings, other buildings can come in, we're going to have de facto standards because they got this one by right, this one by right, and now the reference is, well, they got it. I'm just filling in the middle. We need to make sure that doesn't happen here. If that were to happen, it would destroy the continuity of the plan and our very civilized and attractive Main Street, which identifies us as a town, even though we're a city. We are the classic small city. And that should be the hallmark, one of the hallmarks of the city. It's one of the things that's attractive to all of us. And we should be looking at that height restriction here and on the so-called ladder streets that run down between Cabot and Rantoul to make sure they don't get engulfed in five-story buildings as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. Okay, it's clear that we will be back for round two. So my suggestion would be that we continue this to our August meeting, which is what date? I don't even know.
August 16th? Wrong calendar.
Miranda, will the entire team be back on that date? Okay.
Yes.
You okay with that? Yep. Okay. Okay, I would welcome a motion to continue the hearing to August, our August 16th, 2022 meeting.
So moved.
I'm going to go to Andrea on this one.
Go to Andrea.
All right. Andrea gets the motion, Derek gets the second?
Second,
All
yeah.
right. Where's my little list here? All right. Is there any discussion on this matter?
I would, one little point, and that is, I wonder if we could invite the Beverly Cultural Council, the 10-person council that we have, maybe the two co-chairs could write to us with their thoughts. I mean, they oversee the funding for the Arts District.
They do not.
They do not?
No.
Okay,
No,
well,
that
they-
is a partnership between the City of Beverly, Beverly Main Streets, and Montserrat, who oversee the Arts District.
Okay.
And the city is the fiduciary agent.
The city, okay.
So there is the Cultural Council has a seat on the board.
It's a seat on the
Yeah, but
board,
the art-
and, okay, well,
Somebody
They-
representing the Arts District, that's not the city, is that kind of what you're looking?
yeah. Yep.
There.
I'd be curious
With
as
the
to
partnership
have,
committee.
to have some input from one of our boards.
Anything else on the motion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the roll. Sarah Bartley?
Yes.
Derek Beckwith?
Yes.
Ellen Flannery?
Yes.
Wayne Miller? Rodney Sinclair? Andrea Toulouse?
Yes.
Ellen Hutchinson? Yes. Okay, so this hearing is continued to August 16th, 2022. Thank you, everyone. Been a long night, thank you. Do people want to take a short break, or you want to keep plowing through?
Plow through.
We're almost
Plow
done.
through? Plow through? What?
We just have to set hearings in one round of minutes.
All right. Folks, as you depart, could I ask you to just maintain some silence? We actually are we're going to try to finish up our agenda so that we too can leave, so we're going to move ahead, so thank you. Okay, our next agenda item is to set public hearings. Actually, I think we need to move out of public hearing and back to the meeting, so I'd welcome a motion on that.
So moved?
Oh, you guys are doing. I know.
So seconded, so seconded.
So move it.
I'm good at that.
All right, I gotta move, yeah. I'm gonna call the roll. Sarah Bartley?
Yes.
Derek Beckwith?
Yes.
Ellen Flannery?
Yes.
Wayne Miller? Rodney Sinclair? Andrea Toulouse?
Yes?
Ellen Hutchinson, yes. Wayne, you there? Okay, fine. Next agenda item is,
Wayne just voted yes.
Yeah, I got them for my husband. Those are better. My husband had COVID.
waiver of frontage and definitive subdivision plan for 17 Jordan Street. The applicant is James Clarizia, and,
This is just to set a public hearing.
right.
It's set in a public hearing?
I'm just announcing it.
Okay.
So, there's no reason not to do it August 16th, is there?
No. Should be a relatively straightforward one.
Okay. So I'd welcome a motion on this, someone?
You want to set it for the 16th, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Andrea.
You're welcome.
I'm going to call the roll. Sarah Bartley?
Yes.
Eric Beckwith?
Yes.
Ellen Flannery?
Yes.
Wayne Miller? Rodney Sinclair?
Yes.
Andrea Toulouse?
Yes.
Ellen Hutchinson. Okay. That public hearing is set for August 16th, 2022. Okay, the next public hearing is the special permit number 182-22 and site plan review 155-22 for 40 Dunham Ridge. The applicant is 40 Dunham OC LLC, and their attorney is Miranda Samasco. Miranda, do you need to be heard on this?
Dan's done. He's done with COVID. He's done. Yeah, take it, please. They're too high tests for me. Take them all. Take them all.
Okay.
Already.
Mental.
Okay, so,
Do you want it for August or September?
no, I think we should shoot for August.
I would,
No?
no, I'm not going to discount that. I wanted to add, and I should have added it before, the Parking and Traffic Commission did request a peer review for the prior project.
Okay.
So
Oh.
even though you have them coming back August 16th, that peer review likely won't be complete.
Oh,
So there may be a way to just kind of do bits and pieces like we
Okay.
did before.
Okay.
Okay, I didn't know that, okay.
I meant to bring
No,
that up,
that's
but
okay, that's okay. All right, so there's no reason not to schedule this one, Dunham Ridge, for August 16th,
I'll
right?
move it for August 16th, Madam Chair.
Okay, then. Can I get a second?
Second?
All right. Sarah Bartley?
Yes.
Derek Beckwith?
Yes.
Ellen Flannery?
Yes?
Wayne Miller? Rodney Sinclair?
Yes.
Andrea Toulouse?
Yes?
Ellen Hutchinson. All right. That's done, that's done. Thank you.
Thank Miranda.
All right, approval of minutes. I think the ones we had were June 21?
Yeah,
We are so on top of these minutes.
we've done the other two. I was not on top of the agenda.
Staff, nice going. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes?
Yes.
And have there been any corrections, additions, deletions, scrivener's errors, et cetera?
Madam Chair, I
Yes.
provided Darlene with a few small Scribner's edits.
Okay?
I would just say that the language under holding the construction completion deadline is actually the way it's intended to be, rather than holding construction to the completion deadline. We're holding the date in the document.
Okay.
So
That's it.
I think that's the
Okay.
way it should read, the way it was written. I will accept.
Holding the construction deadline
Yes,
Yep.
the
Yep.
construction completion
what it is.
deadline.
in the motion.
But I will take the
Yep.
extra comma out.
Okay.
Can't
Ooh.
do, I think that's what it is.
Were there any other changes? Yes, Ms. Flannery?
I submitted to Darlene a word choice on the page 1, under both the motions, under the set public hearings. The motion to reschedule should be a motion to schedule.
Okay,
And under my name, motion to schedule versus reschedule.
okay.
Under
Yep, both of them,
Yeah,
yeah.
both.
All right. With those in mind, I would welcome a motion on this, please.
I will make a motion to
Woo-hoo.
approve the minutes from the planning, as amended, of the planning board on June 21st, 2022.
Excellent. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Seconded by Rodney. I'll call the roll. Sarah Bartley?
Yes.
Derek Beckwith?
Yes.
Ellen Flannery?
Yes?
Wayne Miller?
Yes.
Rodney Sinclair?
Yes.
Andrea Toulouse?
Yes.
Ellen Hutchinson? Yes. Do we have any new business?
Yes. On Saturday, the lieutenant governor signed an extension of the lieutenant.
Oh, she did, Karen.
Of the remote meeting
did.
emergency
Oh.
procedures through March 30th, 2023, whatever, the end of
So we
March.
get to pick.
So, I mean, it's kind of your call. I mean, we do now have some larger public meetings coming up. There will be a third project submitted shortly.
Which one's that?
The base of Cabot and Rantoul.
Oh, okay. Oh, my goodness
Gateway?
gracious.
Where the salon at Salon Wellington. like-
Gateway, is that Goldberg?
Yes.
I might have to recuse for that one, I don't know yet.
So I think it's just, at the board's wish, whether you enjoyed sitting here in 90-degree weather and masks.
I loved it.
We do have the option to continue the remote meetings. Hopefully in the fall, we are working on getting hybrid meetings. Hopefully we'll have some technology to have it more efficient. And to be able to continue to do hybrid meetings long-term, but so we have the choice of doing entirely remote, and you don't have to answer today.
Yeah.
But,
We just have the choice, darling, yeah.
Yeah.
Can we pivot? Oh God, I hate that word, but sorry. Can we pivot based on what the case rates are? Because there may be some months where we're like, yeah, no, this is a bad idea.
Well, the dead of winter have the opportunity for hybrid, that's.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
Thank you,
just
darling.
wanted everyone to know, but we don't have to make that decision now.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
73% of communities, the positivity rate went up in the last week with the BA.5 variant, so.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
My husband just had it.
Darling, just so you know. Anybody says anything.
Okay.
All right, is there any other new
For that very
business?
reason. No, thank you.
Well, I will say, I think we did appoint at least one new we are in the process of appointing at least one new planning board member.
Oh, good.
The council obviously doesn't meet in the summer, so hopefully at the August 15th meeting, they'll at least get started in the process, so.
Is it a secret?
I don't know if it's been officially
If he's been
nominated
appointed,
yet, so I
no,
don't know.
can't say
Yeah.
anything.
I don't know if it's been officially submitted yet, so, but I don't remember if it was on the last agenda. I'll look, and if it is, I'll tell you.
Whose last agenda?
If it made it on the city council's
I don't
agenda
know.
before they adjourned. Because if so, then the second reading would be August 15th.
I don't think it did, just because I run with the Ward 5 counselor, and she would have mentioned, we're interviewing someone.
Yeah.
And I don't, she hasn't mentioned anything,
There was
because
a
it's
lot
before her
on
board.
agendas.
It was a lot. It was very busy,
3 open seats?
too.
No, Wayne is on the phone.
Oh, yeah, because Wayne would be there. Okay, so we just have
2 open seats. Yeah, so any new member wouldn't be able to participate in this public hearing that we started tonight. But it would be good if this person has been moved through and could get in, but I don't think they'll be around for the August one either.
Okay.
Hasn't been so bad. Okay.
Okay, on that note, can I just say thank you guys for really active tonight on motions. It was really nice to see more people doing motions. So, it was great.
Engaging.
Thank you so much. Engaging, yes, that's the word.
Thank you, Mr.
That being said, a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, Ms. Flannery? All right,
Absolutely,
you
Madam
got it.
Chair. I'm in.
All right. I have to call the roll. Sorry, Sarah Bartley? Eric Beckwith?
Yes.
Ellen Flannery?
Yes.
Wayne Miller? Barney Sinclair? Andrew Toulouse?
Yes.
Ellen Hutchinson? Thank you, everybody.
Hey,
Thank you,
Welcome.
Wayne.
Thank you, Wayne.
he tested positive on the
so much.
1st
Kim.
of July, and